Before we begin, if you feel deep down that the world is changing in ways we can't fully explain, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. What you're about to discover could open your eyes to something bigger than we ever imagined. There are moments in history when the silence becomes deafening, when nothing is said, but everything is felt. Right now, we're standing on the edge of such a moment, one that may shake not just a country, but the very core of what it means to live in America. Something is brewing behind the curtains of power. It's quiet, it's slow, but it's unmistakably real. And strangely enough, this moment was seen long before it began. Her name was Baba Vanga, a blind woman from a forgotten village in Bulgaria. She wasn't a scientist, she didn't wear robes, and she never claimed to speak for any god. But people listened to her. Presidents, intelligence agencies, entire governments. They didn't always understand her words, but they feared what might happen if they ignored them. She lost her sight as a child during a violent storm. But she always said that's when her real vision began. She described it not as a gift, but as a burden. She would see flickers, distorted glimpses of events yet to come, tragedies waiting on the other side of time. Over the decades, people dismissed her at first, until her words began to unfold in real life. She spoke of two steel birds crashing into the American brothers. Years later, the world watched the Twin Towers fall. She predicted the rise of a terrorist state before ISIS had a name. She saw the collapse of the Soviet Union, the nuclear disaster in Japan, and even the exit of Britain from the European Union. Her words weren't born from data, but time sculpted them into something terrifyingly real. And now, one of her most chilling prophecies is stirring again. It speaks of a powerful figure in the United States, a nation divided, and a future that hangs by a thread. Some believe this prophecy is already unfolding, just as she foresaw it. She didn't name names, she didn't speak in headlines, but what she said feels eerily close to the world we're witnessing now. Like puzzle pieces falling into place, her words echo louder as the calendar nears 2026. This is not just about politics. It's about a spiritual tremor, a fracture in the soul of a country that once stood united, now facing a darkness it might not be prepared for. And what if she was right? What if the warning wasn't just for the future, but for us, right now? Stay with me. What comes next may change the way you see everything. Something strange happened after Baba Vanga's voice faded from the world. Her warnings, once whispered in obscure corners of Eastern Europe, began resurfacing, each one becoming more relevant, more haunting. And among them, one vision stands apart. A prophecy so raw, so precise, that many believe it's already begun. She spoke of a powerful figure from the West, someone admired, polarizing, and deeply entangled with the fate of an entire nation. In her vision, this figure is struck down, not fatally but symbolically. She described blood on the chest, but not death. Instead, a tremor in the land of the free, a shiver running through the eagle. At first, people shrugged it off. Just poetic talk, they said. A metaphor, maybe. But then, in 2024, it happened. A public attack. A leader wounded while addressing a crowd. The world watched in shock, and suddenly Vanga's words no longer felt distant. They felt dangerously real. She had said, "The eagle will tremble. The land of liberty will suffer." For many, these words now point clearly to the United States. The eagle has long been its symbol, and the man injured, a former president with unmatched influence, a figure both loved and loathed, for some a savior, for others a threat. And yet, Baba Vanga was clear. The wound wouldn't be the end, it would be the beginning. She warned of a deeper fracture, one that wouldn't bleed on the outside, but within. She foresaw a nation speaking with two voices, brothers turning on brothers, not because of war or famine, but because of something far more dangerous: hate. Since the attack, the cracks in America's foundation have widened. Protests, outrage, conspiracy theories running wild. People no longer simply disagree, they accuse, they divide, and the fear is no longer about who leads, but about what kind of people they lead. Vanga described this moment not as a single event, but as a chain reaction. "He will rise again," she said, "but the earth will know no peace. Those who follow him will see strength. Those who oppose him will see fire. Either way, the country will never be the same." Her words feel like echoes from a future that's already begun. She didn't need to say his name. The world is filling in the blanks. Could it be that this prophecy wasn't just about one man, but about a nation being tested through him? A collective reflection of wounds too long ignored. Because when a leader bleeds, a country aches. When a country is divided, it becomes vulnerable, not to outside threats, but to itself. The wound was only the spark, and what's coming might be the fire. If the wound was the spark, then what follows is the fire, and this fire doesn't come from foreign borders or distant battlefields. It rises from within. Baba Vanga spoke of a conflict that wouldn't start with marching armies or flags planted on foreign soil, but with whispers that grow into shouts, and shouts that turn into chaos. A war born not of conquest, but of division. She warned that the greatest threat to America wouldn't arrive from across the sea. It would be carried in the hearts of its own people. "The enemy will not wear a uniform," she said. "He will look like your brother." Those words, once dismissed as metaphor, feel disturbingly literal today. We see it everywhere. Families torn apart over beliefs, friendships ending over ideology, churches split not over faith, but politics. People no longer fear speaking to enemies. They fear speaking to neighbors. Silence has replaced dialogue, and suspicion has replaced trust. This isn't the beginning of a war fought with weapons. It's the beginning of a war fought with words. Online conversations become battlegrounds. Every opinion becomes a threat. Every disagreement turns into accusation. The battlefield is no longer a physical space. It's digital, emotional, personal. And in this new kind of war, everyone can fight, and everyone can bleed. Vanga foresaw this shift. She described a nation that will no longer speak with one voice, a place where truth itself becomes fragile, easily reshaped by fear and rage. Many believe this refers to the rising censorship, shadow banning, media manipulation, and ideological policing spreading across society, not imposed from above, but enforced socially, from peer to peer. Because once people fear speaking, they stop thinking, and once they stop thinking, they follow. This is how nations collapse from within, not through force, but through silence. She said the first signs would appear as protests, unrest, constant outrage, waves that build until they reach the streets. We are seeing these waves already. Cities boarding windows before elections, schools hiring security not for shooters, but for riots, communities preparing for disaster without knowing what shape it will take, and beneath all of it lies a deeper wound: identity. People are no longer fighting over policies, they're fighting over who they are allowed to be, over what it means to be American, moral, free, loyal, truthful. When identity fractures, the nation fractures with it. This is why Vanga called it a silent war, not because no one hears it, but because no one recognizes it until it's too late. The danger isn't the shouting, it's the quiet afterward, the moment when people stop trying to convince and start preparing to fight, when debate ends and survival begins. And according to her prophecy, this conflict is only the beginning. It will not burn quickly. It will smolder, deep, hidden, spreading through hearts long before it reaches the streets. The spark has already happened. Now the flames are choosing where to rise next. The flames of division don't just burn through relationships. They eventually reach the very walls meant to protect a nation. Baba Vanga's visions extended far beyond political figures and personal conflicts. She foresaw a time when the very pillars of society, the economy, institutions and faith would begin to crack, not from outside force, but from internal decay. She described it chillingly. The pillars will not fall from storms, but will split from within the stone itself. At the time, many dismissed these words as poetic or vague, but looking around today, the imagery feels strikingly accurate. The United States, once seen as a model of stability and strength, now seems increasingly fragile. Inflation is rising, families are working more but bringing home less, savings evaporate while debt skyrockets. Grocery shelves that once overflowed now carry empty spaces, and behind every price tag is a quiet question: how much longer can we keep pretending this is normal? But Vanga's warning was not just about money, it was about trust. She spoke of a time when people would no longer believe in their institutions, when courts would be questioned, elections doubted, and media distrusted. A time when truth would be traded for narratives and facts would become weapons in a war for influence. We are living in that time. The justice system is under constant scrutiny. Every ruling is now a political grenade. Elections feel less like moments of unity and more like battles between opposing realities. And journalism, the fourth estate meant to protect democracy, has become a mirror of division, with each side seeing only what confirms their fears. This is what Vanga meant by a collapse from within. Not one loud event, but thousands of small fractures that weaken the structure until it no longer holds. She also spoke of spiritual collapse. The people will walk in circles, guided by voices with no light, she warned. In recent years, many Americans have admitted to feeling lost. Faith that once held communities together is now under pressure. Churches close, beliefs are politicized. Hope feels harder to hold on to. And yet, Vanga insisted that this moment wouldn't come out of nowhere. It would build slowly, piece by piece, until the system could no longer pretend to function. Some interpret her words as a prediction of a coming financial collapse. Others see it as a broader moral reckoning. But the common thread is clear. A storm is coming, and its winds have already begun to howl. She described tables full of plates, but nothing to eat. A land counting its riches, only to find dust. These images speak not only of material lack, but of spiritual famine, of a people who have everything, but feel empty. And now, as the year 2026 approaches, many fear we are walking straight into the prophecy, step by quiet step. Because when the foundations begin to shake, everything built upon them trembles too. When a system trembles, something always rises to fill the cracks. Baba Vanga didn't just warn of collapse, she spoke of a return, a figure who would fall but not vanish, who would re-emerge, changed, transformed, more powerful in shadow than he ever was in light. She said, "He will fall, but rise again under another name. The face will be the same, but the voice will carry new power." For decades, those words puzzled researchers. Another name? A disguise? A different person entirely? But after the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump in 2024 and his growing presence despite political defeats and public backlash, the interpretation has shifted. Many now believe she wasn't talking about a literal name change, but a symbolic transformation, a rebirth, not of a man, but of a movement. He may not wear the title of president, he may not walk through the White House doors again, but the influence, the reach, the unwavering loyalty of his base, these things haven't faded. If anything, they've grown. He has become something more than a candidate. To millions, he's now a symbol. Vanga seemed to see this coming. She warned of a time when someone would return, not with policy but with power. A leader not sanctioned by the law, but lifted by emotion. Elevated by desperation. A man who would no longer play within the system, but above it. He will not wear the crown, she said, but he will command it. Some believe this is already happening. Trump's rallies are not just political events, they're revival-style gatherings. His voice continues to shape public discourse. His image remains etched in banners, merchandise, online communities. Whether in office or not, his presence dominates. But Vanga's words were not comforting. She warned that this return would not bring peace. It would be a sign, not of resolution, but of reckoning. He will be praised by many and feared by more, she said. His return will signal conflict, not closure, judgment, not justice. For some, that return represents a second chance. For others, it feels like a threat. The nation is already fractured, and Vanga foresaw that this figure's rise would not heal the wounds, but deepen them. And perhaps that's the most chilling part of her vision, that this resurgence wouldn't come from power granted, but power claimed, from a longing for order in chaos, a hunger for strength in weakness. In such a world, laws grow quiet, emotions lead, fear takes the wheel, and truth becomes whatever the loudest voice says it is. That is what Baba Vanga warned us about. Not just a man returning, but a nation reshaping itself around him, a new kind of leader for a new kind of crisis. And in the silence of falling systems, sometimes all it takes is one voice to rise and redefine everything. If the rise of a leader without a crown signals a shift in power, then what follows is a shift in the very soul of a nation. Baba Vanga's final visions were not just political, they were spiritual. She spoke of a moment when everything familiar would fall away, replaced by something that looked like peace but smelled of fear. From the ashes of division, she said, a new flag will rise. The people will call it freedom, but it will be fear. This is perhaps her most unsettling prophecy, not because of what is taken, but because of what is willingly surrendered. In times of chaos, people don't just seek protection, they crave it. And in that craving, they can trade liberty for order, rights for promises, truth for silence. Baba Vanga warned of a world where control would not be imposed through chains, but accepted through whispers. Surveillance would become safety, censorship would become responsibility, and obedience would be dressed as unity. Some believe we are already stepping into this future, increased monitoring, voices silenced not by force, but by algorithm, public opinion shaped not by truth, but by what is allowed to be seen. The illusion of choice, wrapped in the language of safety. But Vanga's prophecy was never just a caution about governments. It was a warning about hearts. There will be a battle, she said, not with weapons, but within, between truth and comfort, between faith and deception. She believed there would come a time when believers would have to choose, walk with the crowd, or stand alone in truth. And standing in truth, she warned, would become dangerous. But even in this shadowed vision, she left a spark of hope. When the night is longest, she said, the faithful will become the stars. They will not lead armies, they will lead souls. This is the heart of her message, not to incite panic, but to call for preparation, not of bunkers or supplies, but of spirit. A reminder that when systems fall and leaders fail, only the light within remains. She urged a return, not to dogma, but to devotion, to prayer not as ritual, but as rescue, to families turning their homes into altars, to communities bound not by opinion, but by purpose. And perhaps most importantly, she warned of false saviors, charismatic voices promising peace, yet sowing dependence. Leaders adored not for their wisdom, but for their power. But she gave us a key. Those who listen to the Spirit will not be deceived. So what are we left with? A world shifting, a nation breaking, a prophecy unfolding, but also a choice. Because while darkness spreads quickly, it cannot extinguish a heart on fire with faith. And in Vanga's final vision, that fire is what remains. Not fear, not control, but courage, belief, light. The systems may fall, but if the soul stands firm, it will rise.